We're going to call the meeting. Are we ready? Call the meeting to order. Are we ready? Okay, let's stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right, item 1.03, approval or revision of agenda. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Fayetteville-Manlius School District approve the agenda as presented. May I have a motion? Is everything okay? Christy? And a second? Thank you, Anne. And all in favor? Okay. All right, now we're moving into reports. Item 2.01 is a presentation on the K-12 mathematics.
Good evening. Happy holidays to everybody. Thank you for another opportunity to share information with you and our community through our second curriculum presentation. Tonight we're going to highlight the work of K-12 math, and with me are our K-6 math curriculum specialists, Mrs. Fulner and Mrs. Simone. Our middle school math department leaders, Mrs. Albuquerque and Dr. Myers, and our high school instructional specialist, Mr. DeLands. In each of our presentations this year, our goal is to highlight the work that is happening in our district, as well as how it connects to our district's strategic plan. This plan is directly connected to New York State's culturally responsive sustaining education framework. The district first began a deep dive into staff development around welcoming and affirming environments a few years ago. We have shifted our focus to inclusive curriculum and assessment. This shift has been very timely as the state has unveiled a new 5-year plan called New York Inspires. This plan, which was released last month, will likely be adopted in the spring by the Board of Regents, and it's based on the recommendations of the Blue Ribbon Commission. And that is aligned to the CRSE framework that you see here. All 4 parts of the framework are interchangeable, and we hope that tonight's presentation will give you a glimpse as to where all 4 live in FM already. The title of tonight's presentation is Creating Mathematical Mindsets to Unleash the Potential of All Students. FM works to collectively foster this every day. There is no such thing as someone who is bad at math. The approaches that you'll see tonight will reflect our strategic plan to expand opportunities, to promote student engagement, educational equity, and personalization of instruction. The examples you'll hear are reflective of our efforts to create collaborative learning environments that support student inquiry and welcome students in an affirming environment that values and respects everyone. So with that, I will turn the presentation over to our K-6 math instructional specialists.
Hi, good evening. So we just wanted to start by briefly introducing you to the mathematical standards. They're a little different than some of the other areas, the other content areas, in that we have 2 sets of standards in mathematics. So from pre-K through 12, we have our mathematical practice standards, and these are the same 8 standards at every level. And this is really how math is taught. So this is teaching students problem solving and thinking abstractly, making models, etc. And then we also have the content standards, which are specific to each grade level. And so that, just thought we'd share that.
So we thought we'd start by talking about how we affirm students. And we do this, we have some fabulous resources that work in conjunction and are actually from the publishers of our K-5 math program, so we're very fortunate. We have something called the Forum for Equity in Elementary Mathematics, and that comes directly from the Turk investigation authors. And we'll have some specifics for you there. But in particular, this presents reflection tools that are given to students and or teachers, and routines by which they are talking about how they interact with math class. So it could be what they bring in from home, who teachers are calling on, how often students participate, and it's very reflection-based, and it comes directly from our authorship team. So that's a great thing that we're really working on rolling out into as many classrooms as we possibly can. And then we have Storytelling Math, which is also by our Turk authorship team, and it is a set of picture books that they have created so that it is narrative first rather than stilted, kind of silly little books that aren't truly narrative and high quality. And they represent all different cultures, and the culture of the author and the culture presented in the picture book match. And then finally we have number talks. The number talks have been around for a while, and it's a great way for students to participate, to learn about mistake making, revising their thinking, and flexible thinking. So we invite all students to participate and make mistakes in that way.
We just wanted to share a little bit more about the Storytelling Math, because these are just beautiful picture books that have been created and written in conjunction with our math program, K-6. Katie and I have had the opportunity to push into many of the early elementary classrooms and read these stories alongside with students. The authorship team also wrote a guide that goes along with each of the books that have matching activities, whether it be discussion-based, something to do with the math that's happening in the book. But it's been really wonderful to be able to be in the classrooms and be reading these with students. They're very, very engaging texts that are just really colorful and fun. So we just thought we'd bring those to share around today.
In addition, we have some examples up on the board of some of the student reflection responses from the questionnaires from the Forum of Equity in elementary mathematics. They are just fabulous. The students all have a story to tell about their interactions with math, and not only are the students really excited to share an opportunity, have an opportunity to share things that they don't always get to share around a typical math class. The teachers are very, very excited to get to know these things, and so it's created these beautiful connections. One classroom I was using these reflections tools with last year resoundingly said as a group, they absolutely did not like coming down to the carpet for the introduction in math class. And the teacher was floored. She was like, no one would have ever told me that. They would not have had any reason to do that. And so she made a change. And so that's just truly the students as learners of math across all things about them, how they can communicate their needs as learners to the teacher, and we can affirm all of them with whatever they're bringing to the classroom. Next, we wanted to talk about high expectations. So at the top, you'll see our two primary resources for kindergarten through 6th grade. The first is Turk Investigations. And Turk Investigations is a program we've been using at NFM since 1999, which is really a long time ago now. And we are currently using the 3rd edition of Turk Investigations, which is aligned with the Common Core. And then within the district, we have taken that and made any modifications we need to make it match the New York State standards. Then for 6th grade, they use the Connected Mathematics Project, which is also in its 3rd edition, Common Core, and we at FM have supplemented and adopted it to match the New York State Next Generation standards, and we have been with the Connected Mathematics Project since 2003. Below that, we have some of those supplemental things that we like to bring around to the different elementary classrooms. So these are just some examples that are what is referred to as low floor, high ceiling tasks. So the low floor means that there's an entry point for everybody. So everybody can find a way into the problem. But with a high ceiling, they can take it to different heights based on their understanding, their engagement, and that type of thing. So these are just some examples. We've had a lot of success in some grade levels in particular. Second grade at Mott Road has taken off with this. They have a game night where they invite all the families in. And again, what better way to have high expectations to affirm students than to get their families involved. And so they learn the games with us and their teachers at school, so they don't miss out even if they can't come to the game night. And then they have that opportunity to come to the game night and really engage further and bring families in if possible.
The next section we wanted to talk about was inclusive curriculum and assessment. So in K-6, we have district assessments that are given to all students at the end of each unit. These have been fairly static assessments in that they were, for a very long time, our only data point. And so we really needed to have each assessment stay the same. But recently we've added in 2 standardized measures, Ames Web and STAR Math at different levels that are given to students, Ames Web, students 2 through 4, 3 times a year, and STAR Math is given at the middle school level 3 times a year. And so we're hoping to kind of look back at our district assessments, unit assessments, to see how we can help make them even more accessible to all students moving forward. Additionally, we just thought we'd mention some of the practice tools that are available to students. We have many, 1 at each level at least, that are subscriptions that the district pays for. So we have at the K2 level, Total Math. It's a really engaging, fun math app that kids really, really enjoy getting on at the elementary K2 level. We have at 3 through 5, I Know It Math, which links to our standards. Teachers can assign a specific tasks to students based on the standards they're currently working on. And then in 6th grade, we have a program called Math Excel that links with our 6th grade math curriculum. And lastly, new this year, we have a program that we've just begun to kind of roll out this fall. It's called First in Math. And it's a computer-based program that the New York State is kind of promoting and funding for all public schools statewide. So we kind of got ourselves connected with that and are rolling that out in the elementary classrooms as well.
It is a formative assessment, but also gather that information to communicate with parents when they're noticing different things mathematically. Our formative assessments are ongoing based on class needs. Some of them are teacher created, some of them are within the program, but we have that ongoing formative assessment that teachers are using to check in with students. And then Laura mentioned our district end of unit assessments as a summative assessment. And it's kindergarten through 6th grade have consistent district assessments. And again, we have always kept those the same because it was our primary data point for anything that we needed mathematically. But as Ames Web and STAR are coming in and we're transitioning to that, we're really ready to roll up our sleeves and take a look at those in terms of any inclusivity that we can bring in to those assessments. So that's more to come in terms of math and inclusivity within assessments, because we're seeing a transition in gathering data in a summative assessment sort of way.
So Andrew and I will talk a little bit about the extension of the elementary into the middle school level. So as we take a look at how we affirm students in the middle school classroom, establishing a welcoming environment is very important to us. Many teachers do several different activities to get to know our students, to understand the mathematics that they're coming from and where we're going. In the classroom, we have a combination of group work, partner work, and individual work for students so we can reach their needs at the different levels. We'd like to highlight many different approaches for students as they're solving problems, trying to encourage them to solve problems in different ways, showing their work through the use of algebra, through the use of drawings, through the use of plenty of other materials. We continue the exploration of using the open-ended problems as well as the low floor, high ceiling activities that Katie mentioned. Several of us are either currently or have read the book Building Thinking Classrooms, and many of the ideas there we incorporate into our classrooms with flexible grouping, and the major focus of the first part of the book is vertical workstations where kids can record things, and it's an erasable format so kids can tweak and change their work as they're working instead of committing to something on paper. We have several different pieces of additional academic support for our students in the middle school. We have math lab at our levels, and it looks a little bit different at 5th and 6th grade than it does 7th and 8th, but kids can come to see a math teacher for additional support. We have enrichment period after school where kids can come in. Throughout our teaching day, we also have direct consult teaching. We have other supporting teachers to help our students there. After school enrichment activities vary from offering extra help to kids, as well as we, both middle schools have math league teams. We have a first Lego League, which is a mixture of some of the STEM areas with math, science, and coding technology. We do have a coding club and robotics clubs as well. All right, and from the pictures here, you can see these are some of the samples of the different activities that kids have worked. As we look at developing high expectations, we continue the growth mindset using examples from Joe Bowler and Carol Dweck, as well as the mathematical thinking classrooms. We encourage kids the idea that learning from their mistakes is really important, and it's a good thing to make mistakes in life. That's how we learn, through making mistakes. Once again, we offer also differentiated instruction, and whether it's a class activity where we have the kids that are grouped heterogeneously, and we see that they are, we can create activities that are reaching our kids who have several needs, our average kids, as well as pushing our top level kids by offering different activities where the kids don't even realize the difference of what they're seeing, but in the groups they're working together on these things. We do also have a program where some of our high school tutors come down and work with our students, and that's a nice opportunity for our high school kids to interact with the middle school students. Once again, our junior high math league, our students at Eagle Hill and Wellwood have traditionally performed very well at that, so that's a spot to extend as well.
Okay, and we wanted to share with you one of our low floor, high ceiling tasks. This was from 7th grade math. It's called the acrobat task. So it was a tug of war between grandmothers and acrobats and a dog, and they had to look at the different scenarios and decide based on the scenario in the 4th round who would win. The grandmothers and the dog pulling against the 4 acrobats. And you can see on the right-hand side, these are some of the strategies on the whiteboards that the students were using, and there was a whole variety of strategies, which was so exciting to then be able to share and pull together with the whole class. Here's how this group thought about it, here's how that group thought about it, and what were the commonalities, what were the differences. And the kids have really enjoyed working on those vertical, non-permanent surfaces and learning from one another as well. And in terms of our focus on algebra, the algebra strand goes K through 12. So in the middle school, we focus on having concrete, pictorial, and then building up to the abstract representations. So these are some of the models that we have used at the middle school level. There's hands-on equations, which is that tactile piece, making sure that the equations staying balanced. Solve Me Mobiles is a online tool that we use that is, again, application-based, but has that pictorial look to it as well. Clothesline math, where they actually get to manipulate and move the different values, the variables and the numbers. And tape diagrams, all with the goal of leading them to that abstract inverse operations. And then how do we make curriculum excellence inclusive to all learners? We have a variety of tools that we're using. Some of the technology tools that we're using are the TI rovers, the Spheros, and Explore Learning Gizmos, which is that discovery based. In 8th grade and in some of 7th grade, we start dipping into the TI Inspire graphing calculators. Math Excel is a continuation from elementary that goes up to 6th grade. First in Math is new this year, so we're exploring ways of how to incorporate that in our instruction. Delta Math, which again has that growth mindset where students can learn from their mistakes and not be penalized for making mistakes, but learn and grow from them. And Desmos is also an online platform that we use as well. And Mr. DeLon.
Good evening. My name is Brad DeLanza, and I'm the instructional specialist at the high school, and I appreciate being here tonight. The first area I'd like to talk about is how we affirm our students at math in the high school. And one of the ways is we help students succeed in giving them many pathway choices to acquire their 3 credits of math at the high school. As you can see from this flow chart that was developed actually by one of my students this year, it shows how we offer 17 unique math classes at the high school, and there's over 35 different pathways that a student can choose in order to get their minimum 3 credits of math at the high school. We, of course, encourage them to go for 4 credits of math, but you can see there's many, many pathways for students to choose in order to be successful at math in the high school. Another way that we affirm students is our Math League. We have an excellent Math League program. This year we have 55 students active in Math League. It's an after-school program where students come and they compete against other students in challenging and thought-provoking problems. They work together in teams to build those critical thinking skills and collaborate together in problem solving. They compete against one another, they compete against other schools in the county, and then we do send students to the state meet each year, and it's just a great program and students are excited to be part of it. In the classroom, we work to build community using many other tools. One of those tools is our Navigator system. If you have a student in the high school, you've probably seen our favorite calculator, the TI Inspire, and every math classroom in the high school has a Navigator system, and we have these hats, and these hats click on the top, and the hats make the calculators wireless. And what the teacher can do, as you can see on my screenshot here, the teacher can then project every single student's screen at the same time so we can see what they're doing. So here's an example where we were asking students to graph a quadratic equation to model a ball that's been thrown through the air at a velocity of 55 feet per second from a height of 5 feet. And we said, when will the ball land? As you can see, student 1 was able to graph it properly, change the window settings so they could see the path of the ball, and then answer the question that the ball lands in 3.53 seconds. Student 3, we can see, had a little problem with gravity. Their ball, instead of going up and coming down, went down and came back up. So we could share like what's going on there. Another student might share, hey, the gravity constant has to have a negative coefficient in order to have the graph oriented in the right direction. Student 4 on the far right there was trying to answer the question numerically instead of graphically, and they were looking at the t-table trying to find the answer. It's a great approach, but unfortunately the answer was a decimal, and the t-table only brings up whole numbers. So they knew it landed between 3 and 4 seconds, but not exactly when. Student 2 needed help with changing their viewing window so they could see it was actually taking the shape of a parabola, so another student could help them with that. And then there's student 5, who's not quite on task right now, and we can help nudge them in the right direction to join the rest of the class. The system's wonderful in having the students share all their different approaches to solving problems. The Navigator system also allows us to send out quizzes and collect information back immediately so we can see who's getting it and who's not without the other students knowing. And we also can put a student in charge of the large calculator on the screen so they can demonstrate their knowledge and share their approach to solving a problem. So it's a great system that allows us to affirm students in the classroom. Also important is building a welcoming community where students feel involved and engaged and learning is enjoyable and achievable. This is some pictures from the Tuesday before Thanksgiving of my pre-calculus class where we were working on a trig identity puzzle. They were given 24 triangles that each had a trig identity on one of the sides, and they had to figure out a matching trig identity using their problem-solving skills and then build the hexagon. And it gave them a chance right before a break to engage in a fun activity, but still involved complex problem solving, and they were able to collaborate and work together on something and achieve the goal, and then we hung them up all around the classroom. Developing high expectations for our students is obviously important in the math classroom at the high school, and this takes many forms. In many of our classes, we offer problem sets, which give students a chance to take a little bit longer looking at some complex problem solving. They're typically assigned over the course of a week. We offer honors level classes in all of our areas, so algebra, geometry, algebra 2, and pre-calculus all have honors level classes. We also offer an AP class in calculus, which covers Calc 1 and Calc 2. And we have a SUPA class in calculus and in statistics. The TI technology is another way that we helps us encourage high expectations by using the rover systems where they can do some programming, using mathematical models to make the robot move. And it doesn't really matter what class they're in, we're holding them to the high standards. So the example shown here is an algebra modeling example where we're teaching them how to solve a quadratic equation. We teach them 4 different methods to solve that. The quadratic formula, by factoring. On this slide, you can see we also show them how to solve it by graphing and by completing the square. It doesn't matter if they're in an honors class or if they're in our 2-year algebra A1, A2 class. They're all going to be held to the same rigor, and they're all going to learn the same methods of solving a quadratic equation. How do we make our curriculum and assessment inclusive to all learners, which is obviously very critical as well? One way we do this is we make sure that everybody understands why math exists. I think if they understand why math exists, they'll be more engaged in the learning, and that math exists in order to model things in the real world. And almost anything can be modeled by a mathematical model and related to a mathematical model. Linear models can be used to calculate the earnings of a part-time job. Exponential models can be used to model the growth of a city for city planners. Quadratic models can model the object, a projectile that's been thrown in motion, like a football player throwing a football. A sinusoidal model can be used to model anything periodic, like the tides of the ocean or the orbits of the planets. A logarithmic model can be used to model the economy. Once students understand why math exists, they become more engaged. And we try to approach math from 4 angles. We want students to understand that we can describe any function verbally, algebraically, graphically, and numerically. And the approach we take depends on what questions are they trying to answer and what are they trying to learn from that mathematical model. All of our teachers provide guided note packets and post their finished notes every day on Schoology. This gives students who have access to copies of class notes through their IEP, or students that are absent on a field trip or out sick can immediately go to the teacher's Schoology page and find out what we did in class that day, get the copy of the class notes, and find out any other pertinent information that will be posted there. We also offer a 15-1-1 class in Algebra A1 and Algebra A2 at the high school, which is exciting and wonderful that we do that. And all of the math teachers are busy 9th period and also in the Learning Support Center during the day, helping students be successful and master the content that they're learning. We encourage students to stay after with their math teacher, or if their math teacher is not available, with any math teacher that's available after school. We look forward to evolving as New York State graduation standards change and adding new and exciting math courses to our offerings in the future. Thank you.
The last piece that we just wanted to quickly mention, because we know we're over time, is the ongoing professional learning, which is just so numerous. There are so many things going on across the district. At the elementary level, K through 6, we provide district monthly curriculum meetings where the curriculum specialists are meeting monthly with all teachers. These are a great way for teachers at different buildings and grade levels to get together and collaborate on different ideas. At the middle school, we have department meetings that are function in a similar way.
We have such wonderful opportunities to get to different conferences. As math teachers, the only thing better than working with students is geeking out with other mathematicians. So we have opportunities to go to BOCEs for math leadership groups and specific math collaboration groups. Every year we send some teachers to the Association of Mathematics Teachers of New York State Conference, and as a treat, every once in a while we get some people to the National Councils of Teachers of Mathematics National Conference. All of those are really invigorating and bring back huge and wonderful ideas. In addition to that, one thing that is really fantastic at FM is our in-service system, and you'll see from the pictures up here things that you have been hearing about from all of us throughout the night. So these are 3 of the in-services that Laura and I are running district-wide. We are supporting the teachers in the direct consult teaching model and supporting students and differentiating for their students. We are doing a series of courses actually on building thinking classrooms, which Dawn and Andra mentioned just a little while ago. And then we finished a first in math in-service where we had, I believe, over 30 teachers who took the course in order to get familiar with first in math and launch it. The best thing about these in-service classes is we work very hard to select topics that are open K-12, and we have had side-by-side or in communication and school G courses, kindergarten and AP Calculus teachers dialoguing about things. So we try to keep our initiatives very clear. As you've heard through the presentation, get lots of ongoing professional development for those things available to teachers. And then I apologize for jumping around. I know Dr. Doughton has a couple other bullets in here she's going to mention.
Okay, let's wrap it up from there. Thanks, everybody. Thinking about where we want to go in the future, right? So there are a lot of big changes on the horizon for New York State, and the thing that I appreciate the most about being an FM is just that we have a growth mindset, and that's really what we're trying to instill through K-12 math, right? We don't want any kid to walk away and say, I'm not good at math. If that happens, then we need to continue to do this work. To that end, we are really focusing and digging deep into parts of the strategic plan around DEI. We have, at this time, all of our K-12 teachers in a program with Dr. Meredith Madden, a 10-hour asynchronous learning program with her called DEI Matters, which really lays the foundation for all of the work to come. Everything from the history of CRSE to microaggressions to how do we plan curriculum and create assessments that are inclusive to all students. We also will have a group of K-12 teachers across 6 different groups that will be working with Dr. Madden for the remainder of this year, digging deep into a framework by which we can develop curriculum, instruction, and assessment that is fully aligned to the CRSE framework and is inclusive to all students. That work will also be a part of some of the changes to our curriculum maps, which I'm happy to talk about in the future. In addition to that, we have teachers participating in action research this year that is specifically focused on personalized learning. And our district curriculum councils, which is a K-12 leadership group that works with all of their departments individually, began work last year around the portrait of a graduate. So taking a look at the skills that are a part of that portrait, which will be adopted in the spring, and digging deep into their current curriculums right now to think about how do we structure our curriculum maps and our curriculum to ensure that all of those skills are met throughout the course of their K-12 education. We are piloting more high school courses for college credit. We are working to engage in cross-curricular work that will create some new interdisciplinary courses at the high school. And above all, we are working to elevate student voice across all of our buildings with all of that. So these are a few of the examples of what we call, or what Dr. Tice has called the little bets, right? We know that these are really, really big changes, but they will happen in small incremental shifts that that are happening all over our district. So to that end, thank you very much for the time, and we're happy to answer any questions that you have.
Dr. Doughton, I was just wondering, so we made reference in the K-6 and back on slide 11, we talked a little bit about the assessments that we have. So I was just wondering, do we have that data captured, and is that something that can be shared with the board?
Sure.
Thank you.
And yes.
I just wanted to say that I was really glad to see the flow chart. It looks like there's only like 3 classes that all students, no matter where they start in middle school, will be, all students, no matter what they start in middle school, if it's Math 8 or the Algebra Regents, they'll still all be able to get those high-level classes. There's a path for them. I think there's only like 3 that they couldn't do if they started with Math 8, and I think that's really impressive.
Yeah, I'm so appreciative of that flow chart, and I love that a student created that, and that will be part of the handbook for course selection going forward. And it again, is a piece of, sort of a misinformation, right? I think students assume that depending on what you're doing in 8th grade, like there is one track here and one track there, and it's great to have a student create some graphics to dispel some of those myths.
Yeah, I agree, and I think I've noticed there's been a concerted effort to try to kind of reinforce that messaging that there is no one-size-fits-all and lots of different paths. The other comment I think it's great. I've personally witnessed at the elementary level just how so many different opportunities for kids to show their creativity and how they approach math, which I think is so different than what it was years ago. So I guess I'm just curious, at the higher levels, are we seeing sort of the fruits of that labor pay off as kids go through FM to kind of embrace math in a more positive way and looking at multiple ways to embrace the different learning styles?
Yeah, I don't want to speak for all of our teachers, but certainly all the classrooms that I'm in, we're starting to see those through lines. Again, it's just this, it's not this idea of here's exactly where I need to get to this college. Like, I think these are big conversations that we're also having in our big read. We've had some great conversations across our community about what is important, and what is important is that, again, it's a low floor, high ceiling. Like, so where are the places that every kid can enter into their math classroom, and where, and we want to make sure, and our curriculum specialists and teachers say this a lot, we want to make sure not only do kids believe that they can succeed in math, but there is no such, but going faster in math should not be the goal. Going deeper into math should be the goal, and that's really a lot of the professional learning that has come out of Joe Bowler's work, is that doing well in math is not about going fast. It's about going deeper and deeper, and that's really where the differentiation comes in, right? That we can always push to do a little bit more based on where a student is. So it's a joyful place. I hope that that's something that you really get a sense of, is that there is a lot of joy in K-12 math.
That's for sure. As I went through the program over the weekend, I was tickled to see, as a student and a teacher of the humanities, I got excited about math. I think there's a math problem in that, isn't there, Brad, that flow chart? How many, if so, and so, right? I love the little guy or woman, girl, I don't know, whose great-great-grandfather worked with Einstein. I mean, you would not know that if you hadn't posed the question. So I'm so happy, and I love that. There's so many things that I've written down, but that Carol Dweck's work is going not just elementary, where I knew it was, but through middle school, and I'm presuming high school as well, right? So that's terrific, and we have a really deep bench. I'm not saying you're old, but we have a lot of experience in this team. Truly, right?
Oh, yes, a lot of experience.
Yeah, thank you. It is a compliment, for sure. No, I appreciate all that you're doing and have done.
Yeah, our teachers work incredibly hard, and again, we want to make sure that, again, the work never stops, right? So it's, what can we do to make sure that every student succeeds and is able to do what they want to do moving on from FM.
I would love to hear, especially at the high school level, what's being seen and what's being taught with regard to integrating AI into this. How much is it being used? How much is it being encouraged to be used? How much is it being discouraged to be used? I'd love to hear a little bit more on that.
Absolutely. I mean, we certainly benefited from having a full professional development day last November. Again, I think that put us far ahead of the conversation in most of the districts, in my experience, in my time at BOCES, because most of the early discussion around AI was around fear and how it's going to harm. And so usually when you approach things with a fear model, then you think about immediately like, well, we gotta get rid of it. I think that day was one of those days where we talked about all of the opportunities that our educators can do with AI to help in their classrooms, to help it easier to plan, as well as to instruct. But I think part of that too was, we know that this is happening, regardless of whether or not we say we don't do it in FM. This will be a part of their life in college and career and beyond. So it's really about knowing it at a deep level at the educator and administrative level, so that we can make good decisions in terms of instruction. I don't think there is any one approach in any classroom, but I do know that in the feedback that I've gotten from teachers over the last year and a half, there is far more comfort in terms of being able to use materials, and then that has lent itself to instruction around how do we use this well, especially in terms of modeling for students about why AI is not always the answer. That's particularly true in writing, right? And in research. And the more that we can model that, the more that we can teach kids how to use it ethically. So I'm happy to gather more information across all of our teachers, K-12.
Yeah, to Dan's point, I know one of the conferences we were at, they talked about the use of AI even as a support for tutoring, as an equity tool for helping kids who maybe didn't have access to private tutors or whatever, who might be struggling, and how they could maybe use AI to help them figure out how to solve problems and look at that. So I was curious if that's something that's being used or at least talked about from
I don't know
tutoring.
specifically how that one is, but yes, absolutely. I think there are different places. Again, we're in different places where some people are less comfortable, some people are more comfortable, but I'm happy to say that I think we're definitely not in a place where we're just saying, well, we'll just not do it, because I don't think that's teaching our kids what they need to do as adults. So we're going to keep moving forward on that, and I'll gather some more information on that.
Any other questions?
All right,
Thank
thanks so
you
much for your
guys so
time.
much for coming. Those are beautiful books. All right, we are transitioning to item 2.02, presentation about diligent community. And is it Sandy Solo? All right.
I do have some backup.
Good evening, Board of Education members. Thank you for the opportunity to present to you this evening. Sandy and I are excited to introduce you to an updated governance tool offered by Diligent, the parent company of Board Docs. I am sorry that I couldn't be with you in person to present today, but I hope this video will suffice. Sandy and Dr. Tice can answer your questions at the end of this presentation, or you are welcome to email or call me after the board meeting. To give you a little bit of history about FM's use of e-governance products, in 2010, FM adopted Board Docs. At a conference in September of 2019, I learned about Diligent's new governance product called Community. During that conference, I noticed that our version of Board Docs looked different than other users, and discovered that Board Docs product updates were not reaching a number of districts in our area due to firewall issues. I coordinated with OC and BOCES to make adjustments to the service hosting, then with Diligent to update our product. Now we hit pause until this September. Well, let me back up a bit. Back in July, I came across a demo video for Community and I was impressed. This September, we were informed that Board Docs users are being asked to transition to Community due to Board Docs sunsetting within 5 years. In November of 2024, I spoke with a representative from NYSBA who reported that they support the migration from Board Docs to Community. So, what is Community? It is a next-generation e-governance solution that is transparent and inclusive, secure, and efficient. Community is ADA and WCAG 2.1 compatible and Open Meetings Law compatible. The product allows members of the community to subscribe to agenda notifications and request to speak during public comment. It is secure through Google Sign-On integration with your existing logon credentials that you use for your email. It is efficient through its new feature of being available on mobile devices as well as on standard computers, and its ability to download full meeting packets, including attachments. Also, Community Search feature has been improved from the Board Docs search. Now I'm going to turn it over to Sandy to show you an example of Community from another Board of Education.
Thank you, Sarah. Here we have an example of how a diligent community site looks and works. If you click on the picture, a link will pop up and you can go directly to the live site to review at your convenience. From the landing page, you are able to view the upcoming meetings, recent meetings, join the live stream for a current meeting, review policies, and anyone, including but not limited to staff, residents, and community members, can subscribe to receive email notifications about upcoming meetings. As you can see, it is extremely user-friendly and easy to navigate. If we select the Welcome tab, this is an example of what comes up. You are able to access the Calendar tab, which gives you a view of the upcoming meetings and can include committee meetings. There is also a tab for meetings, which gives you the option of choosing previous board meetings or previous committee meetings. There is also a search tab to find topics of interest in upcoming and/or previous meetings. If we open a recent meeting, we have access to the agenda. At this point, there are several choices of presentation. We can print the agenda and/or the agenda packet. We can choose to view the split screen or watch with video. As you see, the live stream video is embedded and appears in the right-hand corner of the screen. This function makes it easy to follow along with the meeting, and viewers can click on the corresponding PDF reports that the board is discussing. Now Sarah's going to explain what's new.
Before I get into what's new, I just wanted to make sure the board knows that although PDFs will be available, there still will be public content and executive content like you're accustomed to in board docs. The default level of accessibility is public content, and only those with specific credentials, such as yourselves, will be able to see the executive content within the system. So now moving on to what's new. Some of the new features I told you about in the beginning of the presentation: the mobile capability, the Google sign-on managed by our technology department, the integration of requesting to speak during public comment, which, by the way, is currently a separate step for our community members, and the much improved visual appeal, layout, and embedded live stream that Sandy showed you. But as they say in game shows, but wait, there's more. You as members of the board will automatically receive a text message and email when an agenda is released. This is currently a separate step of the board meeting process. Community members will also be able to subscribe to the notification service. Another feature that Dr. Tyson and I think you'll enjoy is the ability to privately annotate on agenda items within the system. Please know that if you opt to use this service, you and only you will be able to see the notes that you make. A new feature that I'm excited about is the committee management feature that Sandy showed you earlier. The committee management tool will give each board committee a dedicated space within Community that looks and operates similar to how board meetings work within the system. You're welcome to review the Glenbrook site at your convenience. Clicking on Meetings will show you how their committees are set up. Sandy, can you review the next steps with the board?
Yes. Our next steps, we will need to know when the board would like to transition to the new diligent community. And please let us know if you need any additional information to help establish the transition timeline. BOCE services requests are due in December of 2024 and April of 2025 for implementation in the 25-26 school year. Diligent will migrate everything over from board docs. One thing Sarah and I would like to review prior to the migration is our board docs library. We want to know what library information the board finds valuable and what information the board would like us to archive. Our goal is to make the new site as clean, valuable, and efficient as possible. And now back to Sarah for the most important part of the presentation, the financials.
Before I begin, I want to note that Sandy indicated that BOCE's services requests are due in December and April, and board docs and community are both considered a BOCE's service. The figures I'm going to review with you today are all annual costs, all of which are BOCES aidable. As you can see on this slide, the annual cost of board docs is just over $11,000, and the cost of board docs hasn't changed since 2008. To maintain our current level of service, and the new community product will cost $9,395 per year. This includes meeting agendas, policies, and a document library. If the board wishes to add the committee manager enhancement, the cost is an additional $3,188. The embedded live stream add-on is $3,060, bringing the full cost of implementation of all of Community's features being $15,650 per year. Now I will turn it over to those of you at Eagle Hill, Sandy and Dr. Tice, who would be happy to answer any questions you have.
Wow, what a presentation. You guys. Voiceover actors. Is any...
have to send before midnight tonight.
what questions does everyone have?
It's 5 years. We don't have a specific date that I know of.
The reason I pointed at Mr. Seidberg is he sent us something earlier regarding one of the items on the agenda. This will allow you to put your notes in. Nobody else will be able to see them unless you choose to share, but at least everything you have, you don't have to fumble for papers, everything would be in there for you. In terms of your notations.
Can they be shared just among board and
Yes.
members?
Yep.
So the committee option there, that the 3,000 something, what, can you explain a little bit more about what that particular feature is?
Yes, so the committee documents, everything will be in there like the board docs. So for Community Relations Committee, you can click on that committee, you'll see all the previous meetings, you'll see any upcoming meetings if they're in there. So it really, as opposed to going to board docs, going to library, scrolling down to committees, to finding, it's just gonna streamline everything.
Can you subscribe to the calendar? Because that would be a beautiful thing if we, instead of having to enter every single, either through the Google Calendar, if there was a way to subscribe to this calendar and populate your own personal calendar. Do you know if that functionality is available?
I don't.
Could we find out? I mean, it wouldn't be a deal
Yes.
breaker, but I would love to know. And then the second piece for me is just in terms of the timing. I think if you're hoping to sort of start with the new system with a clean library, then I think we need the requisite time to make those decisions. So I would think maybe it's realistic to say we'd start in the next school year, it's like July 1st, so that we have some time to make those decisions, because I think we will have some healthy debates about what to archive, what to keep.
Sounds good.
Do you think that the live stream feature would save like our AV folks any time, because would be all
Like
connected in
embedded.
there?
Sarah is looking into that. There are two systems, and I think one is like a box type, the other's something different. But she was looking in to see if it's easier, or if the two systems will work together, or if we have to switch to a different system.
So on the public comment part, which we said was integrated, will this allow people to do public comment remotely?
No, but they can fill out what, like, if they want to come speak, they can fill the form out.
So
right
they
from
can do
the
that within the
website.
system, but it's not, like, I couldn't ask to speak for public comment and do it from home with a monitor on my screen, right?
Correct.
No,
You'd have to,
okay.
yes. Any other questions?
Good for you to put it together. Was it fun?
Yes.
Good.
just wasn't clear on one thing on there. So it said for implementation for the 25-26 school year, that it was either January or April. So what's the difference between that you know by January versus by
The
April?
initial requests are due now, but we can certainly always add. So for example, it's tough to go the other way. It's tough to say yes with the initial requests in December and then back off it in April, but we could add in April if we so choose. It's just the initial requests right now, so BOCES can plan their budget. But who's counting? Yeah. In 5 years, we're gonna have to do it anyhow. So the question is, I think, Ms. Cullen, is just to be able to plan it so we don't face plant in terms of what we wanna carry over and what we wanna.
Can we put our budget request in now and still do it in July? And so we have the
Sure.
request in, and then we
Yeah.
can do all the other decision-making?
And I
In
know,
fact, our district clerk isn't here. She's actually at a conference on Parent Square learning the additional features right now. I believe, and I was kidding about the send before midnight tonight, the sooner we act, we get in at the lower rate. If we wait, then obviously that's part of their marketing, but as you see, they've kept things pretty consistent since 2008. I'm sorry.
it's okay. So the only other thing to keep in mind, and I believe Sarah mentioned that maybe we would have like I don't know, create like a little subcommittee or something to review the current board docs to figure out what we wanted to keep and what we wanted to let go of. So just with knowing that we're gonna have additional meetings and obligations over this next year with superintendent search and all of that, I guess I'm not clear on how much time we're gonna need to ask for board members to also review the documents, if that's gonna be another big ask. I don't know how much of an effort it really will be.
Well, we're not gonna review like individual documents, so it would be like looking at like the Thursday letters and saying, you know, keep these amount, archive this, and looking at committee meetings and things like that, and looking at how much we have to keep by law, et cetera. So I think it shouldn't be that many meetings because it's just big chunks of data.
Then, as long as nobody.
I think it's a no-brainer, but
Yeah.
I guess just, I think it would be a shame to lose anything old, but maybe I'm
Well, it would just
crazy.
be archived, right, and still
It'd be
accessible.
archived someplace else, or we'd have it.
Yeah.
Okay. We wouldn't lose it.
Okay, I think July seems. Did everyone get that on the record? Yeah.
We've still found a way to. We've still found a way, so I'd say we budget 90 minutes. So what are the next steps?
Can I ask one question? If we're in, are we in for all of the modules altogether? Is there a circumstance under which we would not go in for one of those two in the middle? No, I'm just asking.
Yeah, so do we need a official, nothing? Okay, we all are nodding our heads, so you're good. Perfect. Thank you guys so much for putting in that work and being proactive to try to get ahead of the game there, so appreciate it. And it was an excellent presentation. Thank you. Okay, item 2.03, President's Report. So later on, we're going to have an exempt session where we're going to be reviewing the responses we got to our RFP proposal request for identifying search firms that we would like to interview to consider coming on board for the superintendent search. And that's the main update I have on there. Item 2.04, superintendent's report.
Thank you, President Fitzgerald. Superintendent's report is in board docs as your backup information. Item 1, capital project update. The high school capital project is moving forward as contractors are readying the new photography studio so that it becomes operational prior to the holiday break. The furniture is scheduled to arrive this week. In addition, the auxiliary gymnasium is nearing completion but still needs the matted flooring to be installed so that it is ready for occupancy as the calendar flips to January 2025. Item next, students' school climate and culture survey. With the student version of the school climate culture survey in the rearview mirror, and we've already received the draft results, we're prepared to release a similar version for the faculty and staff in the days ahead. Administered by Research and Marketing Strategies out of Baldwinsville, RMS, the confidential and anonymous survey is similar to the instrument that was administered over the past couple of years, so that we'll be able to analyze the trend data longitudinally over time for everyone, students, faculty and staff, and families and parents. As a reminder, the family parent version of the survey will be administered in the early spring. And our Community Relations Committee, I'm ad-libbing here, added some questions on cell phones for the faculty and staff to augment the FMTA survey that was done earlier, but this will open it up to all the other bargaining units as well. So I encourage staff members to do it. It'll be released before the holiday break, and it will close after the holiday break. School Start Time Committee has been meeting regularly since the beginning of the year. Administrators have worked with representatives from our transportation department to explore bus routing and schedules in an attempt to see what's possible. In the winter months ahead, we are going to add faculty and staff to the discourse before engaging students and their families in the spring. So while the goal is to have a recommendation ready for the summer coming up of 2025 for a new schedule in September of 2026, the committee is determining whether or not there are any bus routing strategies that they'll be able to pilot in the year ahead so that we don't waste any time. Item next, Community Relations Committee. I mentioned them earlier. They met this past week to discuss the redesign of the school district website, among a number of other important topics. They had a chance to review some of the responses from the recent community stakeholder survey, which was embedded in our annual report, in addition to discussing Governor Hochul's efforts to develop a bell-to-bell cell phone prohibition so that social media does not interfere with the teaching learning process. As you know, a few of us attended the Disconnected convening hosted by NYSET this past autumn in Albany, and I believe NYSET is meeting on the Capitol as I look out into the audience, coming up soon to discuss that with the media. And finally, item last, the NYSET regionalization study, which is on our agenda a little bit later. I will ask the Board of Ed to opt out of the NYSET regionalization study. As you may be aware, the regionalization initiative is a way for districts to be able to collaborate and share resources as enrollments decline throughout the state of New York. At present, the regionalization study will be helpful for rural districts, more rural districts in the North Country and Southern Tier, who struggle not only to provide meaningful electives, but also the core subject areas. NYSET has made it crystal clear that they're not trying to encourage mergers or consolidations, but rather their aim is to publicize ways that school districts are able to work together to ensure that students throughout the state of New York have equal opportunities that are not defined by zip code. If we elect to opt out, this board must act by January 15th, 2025. That ends my report.
Dr. Tice, for the opting out of the study, can you give a little more information about why we would opt out and what the benefits for opting out would be.
Certainly. Basically, I've already started completing the form on the state ed portal. There's 3 parts to it. The first part is taking a look at our data, and I find it ironic that we just went over the data at the last meeting. And you may be raising an eyebrow that why are we entering the data into the portal when I took the data from the portal? The state doesn't have a way to harvest that data, so they are asking all school districts to do that. So not just this superintendent, but other superintendents are busy taking their data and entering it back into their system that they'll be able to use in a meaningful way. So that's item 1. Item 2, that was the easy part. Item 2 is looking at what different and unique opportunities that we're proud of that we're offering here. And item 3 is what areas would we like to collaborate and share with other districts. So the question that a lot of districts are opting out right now until the state is able to better define it is we just are not sure when we complete this. Part 1 seems fairly innocuous and harmless. Part 2 sounds interesting of the things because I think state ed is interested on what's working in the field. But everybody is just a little leery of part 3, that if we make this promise, is it binding? Are we going to be expected to suddenly merge with the neighboring district? I mean, I'm kidding, but partner and share resources. So I think people are just pumping the brakes now. I think it makes sense, as I said, for the rural districts that are, forget about electives, they're just having trouble offering the core classes or things like physics every other year or every 4 years. So I get where this is of urgency, but I think for our district, we pride ourselves on having that local control. We're able to provide, and so I think just being protective of what we have so far is the way to go until things get clarified. Does that make sense? And Barry, I mean, it may be coming to a theater near us eventually, and we'll have to fill it out, but I just don't know if it's right now.
In a sense, we did our, I'm sorry, Mercy.
No, you go ahead.
No, but in a sense, we did our regionalization in 1951, right? Fayetteville and Manlius, parts of Pompey. I mean, we border closely to Chittenango and East Syracuse. So I'm very...
No, I was just going to say at the last BOCES meeting, Dr. Cook talked about this. There are a lot of districts, particularly in the Long Island area, who've been really leading the charge against this regionalization discussion because they were worried about consolidation and the state not being very clear as to what their intention is. He said their intention is exactly what you said, to just look at ways for districts to work together, but their presentation, unfortunately, hasn't been done in a good way.
And I think at the same time, and I believe I shared it in the Thursday letter, the Rockefeller Institute study from SUNY just came out. So I think people are feeling that the devil's going to be in the details, and they'd like to see where the chips fall there. I mean, you have to remember, sharing and collaborating, I've been talking about that since my arrival, but what is the devil in the details is that as you begin to share, and I know another district asked us if we wanted to merge earlier a few months ago, you give up some of the local control. You have to remember that these partnerships are a good idea, and certainly we want to be a good neighbor, but there are strings attached, there's tethers. So, I mean, we may get to a point where we're ready to partner and collaborate, but keep in mind that will come with loss of local control, you know, as other districts will have a say. So I think right now, not to just err on the side of protectionism, but I think we're in a strong position right now, and it may be something that we consider down the road. But with the Rockefeller Institute study just coming out and not knowing who the winners are and who the losers are in the state aid formula, it is my humble opinion and recommendation is just to pump the brakes and wait.
Is there any danger of this going the other way? So New York State loves to mandate, whether funded mandates or unfunded mandates. If we opt out of participating in the studying and planning of it. I'm just wondering what happens in the hypothetical if New York then decides, well, we're going to mandate implementation of regionalization. And then we haven't been involved in the planning process, and we end up just being the recipient of the mandate. Is there any, do you have any concern about that pathway?
Certainly, we've had mandates, we've had unfunded mandates. I think not knowing what the winners and losers will be in terms of the Rockefeller study, you have to remember the governor sets the executive budget, and certainly the Board of Regents champions for additional funding for districts. So I'm not worried about that part. It's a parallel track. But in terms of being foisted upon mergers, it's exactly that. And Marissa brought it up about Long Island. I mean, there could very well be a revolt with the districts that are down there. So, I mean, you're at least considering pros and cons of both. Long Island, they've already made up their mind, a lot of districts, and they're not filling it out because, you know, they want to keep what they have and let the state, you know, fund the have-nots. So does that help answer your question? Anything could be a mandate down the road, but I think right now we're in a position of strength, and it may very well change as time goes along.
Yeah, I guess I'm just trying to fully understand the, you know, participating in it. Obviously there's a time commitment, there's a time and resources commitment, and that's the biggest piece of it as I understand it. But, you know, there's always a difference between participating in studying and planning without that necessarily meaning you've committed to acting on it. And I'm not sure that bridge, I'm not sure if that bridge is there or isn't there. That's what I'm trying to understand is there this bridge from agreeing to participate in the process to committing us to participating in the outcome?
And that's what's unclear right now. I mean, there are a number of districts in central New York that are considering this opt-out for that very reason. Nobody is offended by part one and re-entering the data. I think some are angry that they have to do it, but they're doing it. Part two, you know, shouting from the rooftop all the wonderful things that we're doing. People are not opposed to that. It's the part three, what would, if we were neighboring districts, what would we be willing to share? You know, we're willing to partner in making this up, not just because it's a favorite of yours, but swimming, which we do already, and partner with other districts, but we're not going to partner with Science Olympiad. You know what I mean? So the part three of this form, the survey, that's what's a little disconcerting, is if we put down all the wonderful things we're doing, is it suddenly not only swimming, but Science Olympiad, where we seem to, you know, have enough interested students to suddenly be able to share it with other districts. Is that? So I'm much more, until I know the details, I'm much more in a protectionist mode.
So I guess my last question on that is, do you have a clear sense, the districts that we would, if there was ever a mandate that we would be regionalizing with, would be those that are surrounding us? Do you have a clear sense of which of those are opting out? Because if we're all in this region opting out, then there isn't a regional plan to be foisted upon us. So do you have a sense of those who are around us that are opting out?
I get a sense, and I mean, that's for them to disclose in the weeks ahead or whatever. But just, and I'm not trying to avoid you, but think about Micron and think of the districts that kind of cut to the beginning of the line. I mean, if anything, Dr. Cook, as Marissa knows, as a representative on the OCM BOCES board, has been trying to include all the other districts. This isn't a first come, first serve. This is all of central New York will be impacted by the arrival of Micron. So to answer your question, I think we're trying to get away from some of that competition, first come, first serve, and we got to first settle out how things like Micron impact all districts together. So that's why I think some are just pumping the brakes right now. Does that help?
I just have a question on a different part of your report, but I'll hold it unless we're done with this part. Just on the school start time committee, I have two questions on it. One is, who's on that committee? What is the composition of that committee now? And the second, and this may just be a wording thing in your report, I just want to be clear on where you said the goal is to have a recommendation by summer of '25 for a new schedule. We're not presupposing a new schedule. The schedule could remain the same or a variety of news.
Correct. We just, if you recall, when Dr. Lewin was out here, one of the things, again, people said the data makes sense. We like the data. They couldn't, if you recall, all the different surveys, focus groups, they couldn't decide on a particular solution, whether it was the flip or the slide or the flip and slide and all that. But at that time, if you remember, we promised to give a year's notice. So Fairport recently did that. Webster had done that before in the Rochester area. So it doesn't mean we're going to change everything. It means we want to give, if there's a risk of people having to look for child care, we wanted to be able to announce it a year in advance. So forgive me, yes, the goal hasn't changed. Right now, to answer your other part of the question, it's just administrators in terms of looking at what is possible. So we're not trying to limit, but it's a more convergent approach that it can't just be pie in the sky. We have to be able to pull it off with our bus fleet. So we've been working with the transportation department. Believe it or not, there's a creative idea that's out there that not ready to share just yet, but it's more convergent than divergent. So we're trying to identify the areas where we can make some changes, and then certainly adding faculty and staff, and then family and parents to get their feedback is the plan for this year. So right now it's administrators and transportation department. That's the linchpin.
So obviously, we've always said linchpin is transportation. Are they looking at this through the lens of our current transportation? Or to get back to this concept of mandates, of how we're supposed to flip this bus fleet to buses that have much shorter ranges that they can run on before being recharged for hours? What lens are they looking at this through?
Actually, believe it or not, both.
Okay.
Because not only, right now, as you know, we're triple tripping. So for a lot of this to be pulled off, especially, we want students to get home in time for dinner and sleep. We're going to have to be able to, I think they would. I think we're going to have to look at double tripping. And so whether it's diesel fuel or those other things that you didn't name, I think we're going to have to be creative, think of double tripping, but it also may mean, as some board members in this room have heard at different committees, looking at building utilization a little bit differently too, not because we want to, just because we have to in terms of the new fleet. So I think there's a lot of creative solutions out there, and I want to give credit to the administrators involved, certainly the district office team as well, and our transportation department. Ms. Susan Stearns has done a great job, along with Becky Finnerty, in terms of taking a look at a lot of data to pull it all together. So kudos to them.
Anything else on superintendent report? Okay. Thank you. Item 2.05, reports and representative updates. Daryl, do you have anything?
I really don't have any news, but I would encourage people to read the NSBA's summary of the Rockefeller Institute report. And I did sign up for the webinar and unfortunately was unable to attend, but I do get access to it. So as soon as I hear, I'll report that to you as well.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Marissa?
Excuse me, Daryl, are we gonna reach out to, Senator-elect Ryan to invite him to the district? I see North Syracuse has already done that. So, before he gets too busy, just to have him come and maybe. Yes, our new state senator.
Different Ryan.
No, not Ryan
Last name
McMahon,
Ryan.
Chris Ryan.
Chris Ryan.
Yes, yes. Okay.
But as you saw in the Thursday letter, we've received a SAMS grant from Assemblyman Sturpey, but also outgoing State Senator John Mannion has provided us with some support for safety and security, which I know is near and dear to the Facilities Committee heart as well.
Yes. Keep that
Okay.
generosity coming from Albany.
Marissa, BOCES update.
I was gonna talk about regionalization, but we kind of covered that. We have a meeting on Thursday, so I will ask around the table if other districts are opting out and let the board know. And keep you apprised of what Dr. Cook reports back on that.
And our district clerk reports no remote public comment to answer Mr. Catalino's question in person. Just signing up remotely.
Thank you. Isan, have anything to report? Nothing. Okay, thank you. So my understanding, 3.01, public comments. Nobody is signed up. Must be because they can't do it online. Okay, new business, item 4.01, approval of minutes. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of Fayetteville-Manlius School District approve the minutes of the regular meeting held on November 18th, 2024 as presented. May I have a motion? Jason and Daryl, thank you. All in favor? Anybody opposed or abstaining? Abstaining, got 3. You got those? Okay. Great, thank you. All right, item 4.02. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Fayetteville-Manlius Central School District hereby moves the fraternization or non-fraternization policy into second reading? I thought we were moving into first reading.
Moving it into second.
First, moving in.
It was in first.
Okay. So this is
right, it's correct.
into second reading for the next regular board meeting. May I have a motion? Thank you, Cindy and Ann. Okay, any discussion?
So, we don't really need to do this all and take the time. I shared comments and thoughts that I had with all of you, and I guess I would just ask that policy committee just take a look at those. And if we can get some feedback ahead of the next meeting, that would be great.
Great. And Dan, if you had any particular suggestions, we saw your comments, but if you have some proposed options for how we would suggest maybe we reword pieces of it, I'm sure the policy committee would appreciate that.
I'll add those into there.
Sarah, you did discuss it once more during policy, correct?
Oh, yes, we
When we
have
tabled
discussed it several times.
And has it not also been discussed with the administration, Dr. Tice? The non-fraternization? And they all approved it and,
They did. As you know, this revised policy is really the Erie 1 policy, and we took what we had crafted before and are transforming that into the administrative regulation, which, if you remember, was a compilation of all different sources. So this truly is the Erie 1, which a number of districts use already, and yes, was approved by the administration.
So in terms of process, the policy committee has forwarded this to the board in first reading to move into second. So if there are changes that board members would like to see, shouldn't that be part of discussion now? Because it sounds like it's being referred back to policy. It was tabled last time to get additional discussion or whatever information. But I'm curious as to why it's going back to policy now if it's in first reading, about to go to second. Shouldn't we have discussion right now and then hear what people would like to do with this?
We can certainly do that. But you want to do that? We can do that. So start at the bottom. I'll work my way bottom to top. So bottom of this policy, so the last full paragraph, says that any students, school employees, or third parties that have knowledge of or witness any possible occurrence of inappropriate staff-student relations must report the incident to any staff member, etc. So I don't think that we can, I don't think that we should be mandating students as reporters if they're merely a witness to something or may have knowledge of something. That's their choice to come forward or not. I don't think we have the authority, carte blanche, to mandate that third parties report. And we have a policy, policy 9645, on reporting that's directly inconsistent with, which says that staff members are encouraged to report but not mandated to do so. So that is a policy proposed policy provision that's directly in conflict with an existing policy. We go to, let's talk about that one, sure, go for it.
So I understand your point about mandating students, but for staff and employees, wouldn't that fall under mandated reporting? If you are aware of, you have an inappropriate relationship as a mandated reporter, you have to make a report on that. I'm not sure how the student piece could be changed so that we're not saying students have to. Maybe students are encouraged to, but employees, wouldn't they, Dr. Tice, fall under mandated reporting?
I believe so, yes. I mean, I'm not legal counsel, nor have I stayed in a Holiday Inn Express, but
Since you're
this
sitting there in a
was,
suit and tie, I was just gonna refer
I
to you
know,
as counsel for
this,
today.
this was vetted by legal counsel. I mean, it's one that Erie One BOCES puts out, which is put together by a number of attorneys that work in West Seneca.
The paragraph above is just a sentence, so I don't have anything in that one. The paragraph above that, so this is third to last. This is a policy about staff-student relations. There's one inclusion in the end of that paragraph about this extending to the students' parents. I don't think that was the intent of I've never understood this to be the intent of the policy. I've never understood that we were concerned about faculty or staff calling or having a telephone conversation with parents, but this would seem to preclude that from happening. So I think to me it's just the removal of the phrase "or the student's parents." I'll pause on that one.
What's the process right now? Like teachers want to call parents, coaches want to call parents. What's the process?
Yeah, teachers would call parents, administrators would call parents. In fact, during one of the budget meetings today, we talked about a new software that has the option of one-way communication directly with the student athlete, the parents. So I think.
So when teachers or staff communicate with parents, do they document that somewhere, like in School Tool? Like when we communicate with parents in Syracuse, we have to like put it into School Tool, like under outreach or something, and we say what happened. Is that what we do here in NFL?
We use email quite a bit. I don't know.
No, like you have to document it. Like if I call a parent and I say I'm calling about, I don't know, Johnny did something in class today. I write it in School Tool under outreach. Like, do teachers and staff have to document when they're talking?
I mean, it depends if it's disciplinary. I don't know if every interaction is documented, but certainly under the discipline tab, the discipline contacts
So they don't have
are
to seek
documented.
permission then? To Dan's point, they do not have to seek permission. Like if a teacher wanted to reach out to or a coach wanted to reach out to a parent to
Correct.
communicate about the student, they do not have to seek permission.
Correct.
Do they have to advise someone of making such a call or text or whatever? If they don't, then to his point, we should remove that if they don't have to seek permission, unless you want it documented somewhere, for some reason.
Well, even then, maybe it doesn't belong in this policy.
Yeah, and I thought we removed that paragraph. I thought we did remove that whole paragraph. but we'll have to. Yeah.
It went
I mean,
back to legal counsel, and if you recall, policy asked, why was it removed by legal counsel in the first place? Legal counsel removed it because they felt it was redundant, but it could be in there, so we put it back in. The attorney, no, just her clerk, we put it back in. The question by policy committee was, why was it removed? We had a question, so we contacted legal counsel. Legal counsel said that they took it out because they thought it was redundant. It wasn't that it was wrong, it was redundant.
So just to give a little bit of background from the policy conversation, we had a discussion about the fact that we were maybe overstepping the purpose of this particular policy with getting too much into the communication tools and protocol, because this isn't a communication policy, it's a non-fraternization policy. And so we intended to just spell out what's okay, what's not okay, honestly, about any staff-student relationship and communication, instead of specifying exactly the means of how they would communicate. So
It sounds like we can remove that sentence because it's not what people do now. It's not like what you want them to do. So that last sentence there, it doesn't seem like it's in line with our policy or our process and procedures right now. So I have no objection to removing that. What are people's thoughts on that?
To me, frankly, that whole paragraph
Oh, the whole paragraph.
the whole paragraph is what would ordinarily be in an administrative regulation, not the policy. I certainly think that the student's parents' reference needs to be removed if the paragraph remains, but fundamentally, what tool to use, how to communicate, that's an administrative regulation. That's not a policy.
Why don't we just take it out and put that in a reg then?
We could, but I believe the discussion that was remanded back to policy was to try to get them to use school-sponsored media. I believe the objection was that they couldn't use their own cell phone, and I think this was written with the help of legal counsel to permit them to use their own device, which I believe was the first objection. But if they did, it would have to be with school-sponsored media.
A reg, that's making them use their own, that's doing the same thing, right?
well, let's,
If you make it a reg and say people have to use certain devices, how is that different than having it in the policy?
so the conversation that we had was that we didn't want it in the we agreed that we thought it could go into a reg, but we were uncomfortable with putting it in a reg right now unless we had the particular tools available to any district staff, for example, coaches, to make it easy for them to be able to use other means of communication to be able to reach students. And right now, we don't have those tools available, so we didn't want to put it in an administrative reg at this point, but that was where.
Those tools available, Dr. Tice? Like, what's the time frame to have all those tools in place?
I mean, we have some tools. We're looking, as you could tell from my discussion earlier, at better tools that not only document the communication thread.
But at this point right now, do we have tools in place that would allow our staff to communicate through district communication apps with our students? So why couldn't we have the reg now? I mean, obviously you're looking for better, but we're always looking for better. Why couldn't that be put in a reg now?
The reg doesn't need to name the tools per se, it just has to provide the definition of what that is. We do have tools. There are Sports U, there's tools that are used by coaches now, and then obviously all the Schoology and other resources that are used, Parent Square for broader messages. So, I mean, I guess the question is, does this belong as a reg does it belong in the policy, or does it belong as a reg as a companion to this policy, or is it a reg that's sort of its own thing, which is about communications? to students and parents, it sounds like, right? We're trying to have really clean communications with our community that are not texting back and forth on a staff member's personal device.
I don't want to speak for Mr. Seidberg. I was under the impression that the objection was that we were not allowing folks to use their own personal device. So I believe Policy Committee made a concerted effort to allow people to use their own device, but they had to use school-sponsored software. That's the line. Now I worry taking it all out means I can use my personal device and do Instagram or Snapchat, and so the idea was you could use your,
Well, I was going to say, Ann, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe we tried to take it out because we discussed that this policy was really about sort of setting the framework to say you can't have inappropriate conversations and relationships with students.
It was
period.
more about the content than the tool.
Versus the how, which would go into a reg in some form or fashion, but that's up to the administrative group to be able to figure out where that fits, if it's in a communication, overarching reg or wherever. But for the purpose of the policy, it was more setting the guideposts to say, listen, you don't socialize with students on a personal level could be inappropriate.
See now with that last sentence there, if an employee believes they need to use other means of communication, so other than district communication tools, that's not the same as that they can't communicate with parents. I'm sorry, I read that a little wrong. I misunderstood when.
I think Policy Committee, and again, I don't want to speak for all the Policy Committee, I think they were trying to honor Mr. Seidberg's initial objection of not using, the prohibition of using their personal device. They were tethering it to a school-sponsored media that would be able to track it and know that Big Brother was watching. So I think policy was trying to honor the request and tether it.
But what does the majority of the board wish to see?
I think
That's
they
one
agreed
thing.
with that.
Hold on, and I appreciate that, and I think that got that mostly right, other than this reference to the student's parents part, which I don't believe belongs in here. But the mostly right part is there's still a fundamental, just core issue. Is this proper for policy, or is this proper for an administrative reg? That's just my question. And obviously, there's going to be learnings through this, where it's going to be, well, what about because I have scenario X, or what about I have scenario Y? And there's much greater flexibility in an administrative reg than there ever is or will be on a policy. So that's why, just in my view, I appreciate what it was addressing, but I still think it might live better in a reg than the policy.
But as I looked at policy, even though we said we moved all that other to reg, I believe we deleted this, right? There was a separate sentence that referenced an annual review of the reg. We took it out and embedded this all in. See, I'm trying to help you with the notes, so it's just, we deleted the reference to the reg, and that's why this appeared back in.
Because there was the bulleted list, right? And then in the other one, there was this paragraph.
We deleted the reference to the reg, if memory serves, and that's why this got embedded again. And so we did, I give credit to our district clerk, ask legal counsel why it was removed, which I think was brought up at policy, and it was because there was a feeling of redundancy. Now, I don't know if it was redundancy to the old one that we created, which was kind of a hodgepodge, but there was no, legal counsel wasn't offended if it reappeared here.
Council has reviewed this, and you said it went to our staff who would be under this policy, following this policy.
Administrators.
Administrators. Did you take it to the teachers and see what they thought? coaches, Mr. Sugar?
I
Dr.
do not
Sugar?
believe
Dr.
so,
Sugar now,
no.
right?
Dr. Sugar.
Dr. Sugar now. Did we ask them if they thought this would impede any of their communications?
We can. This is hot off the press. We haven't
I mean,
agreed to.
between now
we
and second
haven't
reading,
agreed to it.
I think that might be a good idea. I don't think it's going to, but I also am worried about trying to wordsmith to individual board members, because I would like to hear the majority of the board members think about this right now.
I have about 3 problems. I thought I had 2, but I maybe have 3. First of all, these notes didn't come to us till late this afternoon. I did read them. My second problem is my technology is not working tonight, so I can't even access it. But I said in the very beginning, we tabled this, we asked the policy committee to look at it again. They looked at it again. It went through legal. The administrators approved it. I'm very happy with the way it is. We cannot be too careful. That's all I want to say. We, have been very lucky so far, but I can remember things in my own youth at FM that if I'd known about a policy, I'd have been right in there. So that's all.
Chrissy, Jason, do you guys have anything?
So if I understand it correctly, there's more flexibility with the reg, right? As opposed to it having to come back to policy, right? So I would think that you would take it out and put it in the reg, so that way it wouldn't have to continually come back to the board if you change it, right? I'm just reading that and kind of, after hearing what I've heard tonight, it just seems like that would be a better way to do it. So I'm fine to take it out. I think that kind of makes more sense. And then to pieces that I've heard, I just want to make sure I have clarity. So Craig, we do or do not, and this is a yes or no question, we do or do not have a way for coaches of sports teams, directors of after-school groups to communicate with students through an FM-sponsored software?
Yes.
Yes, okay, thank you. So there is no ambiguity, right? So if we change an administrative reg or this policy, there's no ambiguity amongst those groups, right? We can clearly communicate to students and or administrators and or whomever else is leading after-school groups or sports teams how they're going to communicate, right? And we can do that through
No
our
ambiguity.
communication.
In fact, a lot of staff prefer to use school telephones, school-sponsored.
Yeah, but I'm
ways
just
of-
thinking of, right, like, so, for example, the musical's coming up, right? And there are all those different groups within the musicals, right? And they need to communicate, and there's a change in this weekend's set build time or whatever. So whatever, we have a software, whether it's school tool or ParentsWare or whatever it is, but we have a tool that the district pays for that we can communicate out to everybody to say, this is how we're supposed to do it going forward.
Yeah,
Yep.
at minimum, it could be email.
Perfect.
Students have account.
That's fine. I just want to make sure that that tool's in place, that's all. Thank you.
I would agree with Daryl and what she said. That's how I feel. I did want to make one change, or just one comment. We had talked about that last paragraph about students must report. Did we clear that up, that was taken out? I thought I heard it was taken out, and then it wasn't taken out. That's the only part that I'm confused about, that it was already part of another policy. And then you said you thought we took that out. Okay, that's my only part, because I don't know that regulation, if we can tell students they must report things like that.
Right.
Yeah, okay. Outside of that, I think that it has gone through the proper channels.
Cindy?
I agree as well, and I think having had legal look at this is important. And during the day, staff can use the phones at school and not use their own personal devices to call parents. And I do think it's important that there is a platform that you can go through outside of school hours that would be monitored to protect everyone, quite honestly, to eliminate a lot of questions.
I mean, I'm hearing everyone's points about this paragraph regarding the tools. I just think it's a helpful how-to, because you said the goal of this was to define what can't be done, but it's also helpful to know what can be done. So I don't think this hems us in any way, just to say district-managed communications. I don't think it requires us to keep going back. And I think it's a little bit of a gray area, whether it's an administrative reg versus a policy. I think there's probably blurry lines all across our policies and regs about what fits in what bucket. So I support it. I think we need to figure out maybe just the parent piece and then the reporting piece. But other than that, I would support just moving forward.
Okay.
All right, so let me just finish working upward. So we still have to figure out, come to agreement on the parent piece and the reporting pieces. We've identified those. I'm still not clear on what happens through this policy when you have an employee and you have student or students who are interacting on non-district matters. So a teacher who's doing private tutoring, a teacher who is doing out-of-district personal music lessons, a teacher or employee who is doing off-season conditioning or sports practices, where they are allowed to communicate with students or not allowed to communicate with students on their own tools and their own devices. Because this talks about employees and students. They're still employees, they're still students, but it's non-district matters. And I just genuinely, from this policy, I'm not clear where that falls.
Does that need to be a different policy? The relationship's different.
Yeah, because this policy is about staff to student relationships, not people who have a private, that's a separate thing, which we can't, I mean, we can say you can't like solicit clients or whatever during, using school devices or in school, but you can't say that if, one child has a coach through another program that they can't communicate through that relationship, because that's not something we can monitor. I don't know why we would even consider that. It's not our business.
No, but we're talking about an FM, if it was an FM employee that was giving, let's say, private music lessons to an FM student, but it's not through the school, it's private, right? So are we saying, is that included or not included in this
No, it's none of our
policy?
business. They're not doing it as our employee. They're doing it as their
Okay,
own
but that's
company.
right, but it's an FM employee communicating with an FM student, right? So do you understand where the gray area is?
There is no gray area, because if they are an FM employee and they send something to their whole music class, right, through our channels and say, hey, I'm gonna have lessons on Saturday, whatever, that's wrong. If they are an FM music teacher and they post something at the library and say, hi, I'm gonna offer tutoring or whatever, and people communicate with them through that thing that they post in the library, it's none of our business.
So if that's the case, I would hope agree that scenario you just laid out is a scenario that is unrelated to coursework or official school matters. My point is, you said those are things that are none of our business and don't apply to this policy at all, and we can't regulate at all. Those things that you just described are things that are unrelated to coursework or official school matters.
Not related to their job as an employee in our district. This is related to their job as an employee of our district interacting with our students. What people do in their off time, we cannot control that.
And I get that. But the policy is specifically as worded right now. Says you cannot have frequent communications with a student unrelated to coursework or official school matters. Those things, tutoring, private school, private music lessons, theater lessons, sports things are unrelated to coursework or official school matters.
But this says policy 9150, staff-student relations. So this is regarding staff and students, people in their official capacity with students. This is not about people, what they do.
That's your interpretation.
No, that's the title of it. It says staff-student relations, right there in the title.
Yeah,
And then the paragraph also starts inappropriate employee behavior. So it's right there. It's still not just my
Yeah,
opinion. It's
they're
right there.
still employees, and they're still students, and they're engaging on things that are unrelated to coursework or official school matters. So there is.
But not within their job description.
If you don't see a gray area on there, that's great. I see a gray area on there. I have a concern on that gray area.
So this is where we've gone round and round, and the intention was really, I believe, from everyone, was to basically just highlight that it's inappropriate behavior and inappropriate personal relationships that we are trying to make it clear is not okay and we are not going to tolerate. So I think the policy committee's heard everybody's comments, and then now we can.
I just have one last question.
Okay.
I don't know what undue familiarity means.
I think you would if you saw it. It's like art.
Is it? I don't know what it means. I have no idea what undue familiarity means.
Can the policy committee apply a definition of undue familiarity from legal counsel to the policy before, we approve it in second reading? Ask counsel what undue familiarity is from a legal perspective, and we can insert it in there. I have no problem with that.
Sure. Is there any other?
As for language. So you have a paragraph in here that says inappropriate employee behavior includes, and that has all these examples, and that's including one that we just talked about. If the paragraph before just talks about that staff members are prohibited to engage in inappropriate employee behavior as defined in here, then you eliminate any issue regarding an undefined undue familiarity. Just tie the examples to the prohibited language.
I think you should be on the policy committee, because it's clear with me.
Well, I mean, look, I appreciate look, version 1 was much longer. It covered a lot. I genuinely appreciate the work that's been done on it. It doesn't mean that I don't have concerns about it as it exists today.
And we appreciate all that. I think everybody's had an opportunity to give their concerns, but at some point, Madam President, you have to call the question. So.
We've moved it, so we are going, I forget what we moved, into second reading. So, okay, all in favor to move it to second reading? Move it to second reading, okay. Anybody abstaining? No, everybody voted. Okay, moving along. 4.03, be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Fayetteville-Manlius Central School District makes the following appointment as presented. May I have a motion? Thank you, Cindy. Second? Anyone? Daryl? All right. All in favor? Anybody opposed or abstaining? Okay. 4.04. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Fayetteville-Manlius Central School District hereby agrees with the administrative recommendation to voluntarily withdraw from the New York State Education Department regionalization study. May I have a motion? Marissa, thank you. Second? Daryl again. All in favor? Anybody opposed or abstaining? No? Okay. Thank you. Okay, board development, nothing. We are developed. 5.02, potential considerations for future meetings. Okay, so as you can see, we are updating our chart as we move along with some items. Anybody have any questions or comments on there? Nope. Okay. Item 5.03, RFP award. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Fayetteville-Manlius Central School District hereby continues the agreement for mental health services with CNY Mental Health Counseling in accordance with their 2022 proposal for the 2024-25 school year, year 3 of 5. The Board of Education notes that any extension of the contract in for a 4th or 5th year shall be subject to annual administrative review and approval by the Board of Education. May I have a motion? Thank you, Jason and Dan. All in favor? Anybody opposed or abstaining? Nope. Oh.
Isn't this something that should be teed up for July so that we're not doing it mid-school year?
Well, we talked about that. I mean, that's one of the reasons we missed it last year. The RFP, as you saw in my backup information, was originally issued for 5 years. And what was unclear was when the board adopted it mid-year, because that's when the RFP was, initiated, was the board's, and that's what we couldn't decide on. Was it 5 separate options, or was it a 5-year plus 4 options for a total of 9 years? So we're treating it as it was 5 separate 1-year options. So it does mean we missed last year. We did it this year, but in the future, and this may come to fruition, because you saw my point, I said it may be moot. They're talking about reissuing the RFP because of different services. And so that may occur this spring. And then if that's the case, then we can definitely park it on the reorg. That's a longer answer than you wanted, but I think getting out of the mid-year cycle will help us not forget it.
Did we vote all in favor for that? Did we already vote? No. Did we? Okay, sorry. Item 6.01, future meeting agendas. So we meet again after the new year. Oh. Happy New Year, all of you. I'm sure we'll see each other somehow. Item 6.02, dates to remember. Lots of concerts coming up, so you can attend. Item 7.01, so we have a proposed executive session. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Fayetteville-Manlius Central School District enter into executive session for the purpose of discussing the employment history of an administrator. May I have a motion? Thank you, Chrissy and Jason, and all in favor? Okay, aye. All right, so we are gonna go into executive session, and then we will return to vote on consent agenda. No, all right. It's fine if you guys would like to depart. Or if you're on the edge of your seat for the consent agenda, you're welcome to stay. Oh, Lisa and Melissa. Okay, we're back. All right, item 8, consent agenda. May I have a motion to approve? Okay, thank you, Marissa. Seconds from Daryl. All in favor? Anybody opposed or abstaining? Okay. And item 9, no, we're skipping. Item 10.01, proposed exempt session. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Fayetteville-Manlius Central School District enter into exempt session for the purpose of, oh, there it is, of the superintendent search. May I have a motion, please? Chrissy and Jason, thank you. All in favor? Is anybody opposed or abstaining? No. Great. And then we will adjourn. So the rest of you hangers on, thank you. Have a great evening.